Today we're going to be working on 3-digit division, which is nothing more than 2-digit division with another digit added. One thing I try to get across to the kids and I try to reinforce is the fact that long division is a process. It's a cycle, and the steps just repeat over and over again. And if you can just master those steps one time and realize that they just repeat, then it becomes much simpler to solve. So one thing I've asked them to do also is to remember to write the initials D, M, S, B for the steps we take in long division at the top of their whiteboard or the top of their paper. And we remember it by thinking of dirty, monkeys, smell, bad. It's just an easy way to remember it, but if they can keep track of where they are in this cycle, when they get stuck, think about what was the last step I just did. It's going to help them remember what to do next. So if we had a number, say 518, and we divided that by 3, I would want the kids to split their whiteboard. One thing I've reminded them to do, some of them do, some of them don't, it depends on how comfortable they are with their math facts, is to list multiples of 3 before you start the problem even. And by doing that, it's going to make it a lot easier to answer the questions when we ask the questions. So we'll get this done. Whoa, there we go. Sometimes I can't even read my own writing. And that's really as far as we need to go. So let's go over to the problem and let's look at that and let's think of our cycle, our steps. Dirty, monkeys, smell, bad. We always start with that first digit. So if it's helpful to the students, they could even take a sticky note like that and they could cover that up or cover it up with their hand so that they're just focused on that one digit. And so the question is the same every time, and the question is always about this divisor, and that's the divide step. And the question is, how many groups of 3 can you take out of 5? And you answer the question right above where the digit where you were able to divide. And so we could do it one time, so we put a 1 up there. Our next step is multiply. 1 times 3 is 3. Subtract. And then the last step is B, bring down. And so I could slide this over if I need to. And I see a 1 there, so that 1 is what I'm going to bring down. So I like to draw an arrow, and I put the 1 there. And I've been having the kids do this because they get lost about this point a lot of times. And so now we're back to the D step, and the D step is always the same. How many groups of? In this case, there's a 3 as the divisor. So how many groups of 3 are there in, and I just follow that arrow, in 21. And I'm going to write the answer to that question up on our answer blank at the top, which is anytime we ask the question, that's where the answer to the question goes, on the answer blank. And so to answer the question, I might come over and look at my multiples and get as close to 21 as I can without going over, and I see that 3 times 7 is 21. So the answer to the question, how many groups of 3 can I take out of 21, is exactly 7. Next step is to multiply. 7 times 3 is 21. Next step, subtract. So I subtract. And then I look to see if there's anything to bring down, and there is. So I draw a long arrow down and I bring that digit down. I go ahead and put my arrow here to refocus me. And then I've got my question again, my division question, always the same. How many groups of 3 can you take out of 8? I can come over here and see the closest I can get is 2 groups of 3 is 6. So the answer to the question of how many groups of 3 can I take out of 8 is 2. I write the answer on the answer blank. Next step is multiply. 2 times 3 is 6. I subtract, and that leaves me 2. And I look to see if there's anything left to bring down. I always need to make sure the number that I get, the difference when I subtract, is always less than this divisor. Otherwise I could take another group out. And 2 is less than 3. So I would just come up here and I would just write R2. And I like to step back when I'm done and look at my answer and say, does it even make sense? is it possible that if I had 518 cookies and I was dividing them equally amongst 3 friends, that each one would get 172? And that's a reasonable answer. So at least it makes sense. And then I would check my work over here to the side by taking 172 times 3. And I'd start at the ones place again. So I probably ought to do that. It'd be 6. 1, carry the 2. And that's 3 plus 2 is 5. And I get 516 plus my remainder of 2 is 518. And if it doesn't match, then I'm going to come back over here and look for a mistake in my division. If I don't see a mistake there, I'm going to check my multiplying over here where I checked my answer. But either way, those two have to match. And if they do, then I know my answer is right as long as my remainder is less than that divisor, because it does have to be smaller than that. And those are the steps we take for long division. The only thing that could possibly be different, and I'll try to stay with 3, is sometimes we might have, let's see, 220. We'll say 220 and divided by 3. And I'm going to get my sticky note out again. And this time when I look at 3 and I say how many groups of 3 can I take out of 2, the answer is 0. I could write the 0 at the top and go through the multiplying and all that, but I just like to slide the sticky note over and say, okay, how many groups of 3 could I take out of 22? And then I would look over here again and I would see 21 is as close as I can get. I would write my 7 above the 2. It's important that I write it above the 2. My next step would be multiply and then subtract. And then B is bring down. And I'm back to my division, back to my question again, which again is always how many groups of 3 can you take out of 10? And when you look over here, 3 times 3 is as close as you can get. So I answer the question on my answer blank. 3 times 3 is 9. I S subtract. I get a remainder of 1, which is less than 3. And I ask myself again, does that make sense? And it is a reasonable answer, and so I would check it by coming over here and doing 73 times 3, 219, plus a remainder of 1 is 220. Those match, and so I'm done. And those are the steps I take. I just try to get the kids to practice this over and over again and to understand it's a cycle. It's a process that repeats. And to understand some basics like the division step is always asking a question about the divisor. It's always how many groups of 3 can I take out of whatever. And the answer to that question always goes up on the answer blank. And then the multiplying step is always the digit I just wrote as the answer times that divisor, and that goes down there, and then of course I subtract. And so hopefully this helps you with 3-digit division.